In the pretty city of Spokane, a serial killer is on the loose.
This is where Kathy Brisbo's body was eventually recovered.
The man they hunted was one with dual obsessions, using prostitutes and weapons.
Police not only know that they have somebody with an arsenal of weapons, but they actually have clinical evidence from a doctor saying this person is potentially dangerous.
Douglas Perry was the gun-obsessed murderer targeting sex workers, but tracking him was not going to be easy.
By 1994, he was identifying as a woman in a man's body, and he was a self-described transsexual.
It's in Thailand that Douglas Perry becomes Donna Perry.
As detectives in Spokane attend the latest discovery of a body, the question arises, what could possibly be going on inside the mind of a serial killer? If it could talk, the Spokane River would have a lot of stories to tell, not all of them good. It once teemed with salmon heading upstream. A dam built in the 19th century put paid to that. The rainbow trout caught today are not fit for human consumption because of the pollution caused by industrial practices. And by its banks, a brutal series of murders carried out by a man with a deeply disturbed mind.
He's basically just done with this. This may be the only time he was fought with, and he is done with this, and that is gone, and he spent too much time and made too much noise, and he's got to get out of here. So he's not going to go down there and try and cover the body. So when you stand here looking down, you can see it pretty easily. Just like the others, there was no attempt to hide the bodies in either of the other two. They were just disposed of.
The victims were Yolanda Sapp, Nikki Lowe, and Kathy Brisbo.
The three murders occurred over a period of about 3 months at the beginning of 1990. The women were all sex workers in the area of East Sprague Avenue.
The man who killed them was Douglas Perry. It took 22 years to catch him. By the time he was in custody, he was no longer Douglas. He was Donna.
Donna Perry claims that one of the reasons why she had that sex change operation was that she felt that if she had her genitals taken away as a man and got rid of that portion of her life, then she wouldn't be as violent. She wouldn't have that desire anymore to kill.
Perry said, well, Doug didn't stop it, Donna stopped it.
What made Douglas Perry a serial killer? And why did Donna make him stop? Getting inside the mind of Douglas Perry begins in the countryside of the state of Washington.
Doug Perry was living as a child in an orchard in Omak, Washington, which is kind of this north-central part of the state of Washington. It's rural, predominantly farming, ranching communities. So he was raised on that orchard, father, mother, older brother.
So far, so normal, but far from the complete picture.
He was molested by his dad, picked on in the family, and abused emotionally, sexually, and physically.
The adolescent was one crazy, mixed-up kid. His best friends became guns. He had a wide selection.
He really seemed to have an affinity to guns. He loved them a lot.
When he describes a firearm, it's almost as if it's taken on a human characteristics, and he's in love with the actual weapon itself.
His father died in 1968 from a burst blood vessel. His mother, who then became the primary caregiver, was admitted into a psychiatric facility with schizophrenia. Guns became Douglas's lifelong obsession. By 1974, aged 21, Douglas Perry had quite the collection as he pursued his hobby. He hoarded them, tended to their every need, and fired them into the Washington countryside, long into the night.
That many of all these various pistols and rifles and shotguns and all of this ammunition, I mean, like, this guy is preparing for battle.
The once abused child had grown into a man willing and able to defend himself. His rap sheet in the 70s included assault and charges related to using his array of weapons. Linda Papadopoulos has been delving into the facts of Perry's life, unlocking the secrets of his mind.
In 1990, Perry is living in Spokane, Washington.
The previous year, he'd been picked up by police for patronizing a prostitute in his new hometown. It was behavior associated with a second obsession: sex workers.
One of the things that we do know is that he often used sex workers, and in fact, we are not aware of any significant relationships outside of this sort of transactional relationship that he had with sex workers.
What does that say about the complicated mind of Douglas Perry?
You know, this attests to perhaps the idea that he felt uncomfortable around social relationships. He felt unable to connect with people, or perhaps more insidiously, what he valued within the relationships that he had with sex workers was his ability to dictate the terms, to control, to use. So there was something about kind of commodifying and objectifying women.
Summing up the makeup of the mind of Douglas Perry in 1989, it's clear he's a dangerous man. He tended to violence, and his lifestyle was dominated by a love of guns and a use of sex workers. And there was a third element: his feelings generally towards women.
He didn't like women. He found them disgusting and vile. At least the women that were involved in the sex trade, that were prostitutes. He viewed them as pond scum.
That's how he described sex workers to a cellmate when serving time later on for weapons offenses. A conversation featuring an outlandish, still unproven claim.
He allegedly told his cellmate that he had murdered up to 9 prostitutes and that he killed them because they were pond scum who were wasting their lives, and that because they could have children and he couldn't.
What he said is he hated the prostitutes, and he hated them because they could reproduce, and they were wasting it.
He may have hated them, but by 1990 he was spending a lot of time with prostitutes in a city, Spokane, which stars itself as offering urban chic. Outwardly affluent, the sex workers are not easy to find unless you know where to look. There are some areas where chic has been swapped for cheap sex. Yolanda Anastasia Sapp, just 26 years old, would ready herself most evenings to ply her trade in the Sprague area of the city. Her favorite spot, just a mile from the river.
It is important to remember that regardless of the choices that people had made, could be because of addictions or any number of reasons, that these were the daughters of somebody that loved them, the friends, the sisters of somebody who cared, regardless of their life choices that they made.
Douglas Perry knew the area and, aged 37, had decided to act on his dual obsession: hating prostitutes, loving guns. As he cruised Spokane's red light district, Yolanda Sapp was preparing for a night's work, about to pick up her next paying customer.
And Yolanda basically found herself in this awful situation with a person that described sex workers as the scum of the earth. This is somebody that not only saw women as less than, but in particular, he saw sex workers as disposable, as not even human.
Not far from the river, an area of wasteland near East Trent Road, Spokane. Perry had already checked out the lie of the land.
He came up here and had to have parked in this area. This hasn't changed that much up here. It's always been a little bit of a kind of a turnaround. It's secluded mostly from Trent, so people could come back here and kids could drink beer and that kind of stuff.
The noise from the Great Spokane River drowns out a lot, like screams perhaps. It is February 21st, 1990, when Douglas Perry is in his car with a gun and an urge to kill. He also has a plan to avoid being caught. On the streets of Spokane, Yolanda Sapp cut a striking figure and was, according to her boyfriend, popular to those looking to pay for sex.
This is a woman like any other. This is a young woman with hopes and dreams and desire to be loved and cared about like any other. And I think it's important to remember that.
Douglas Perry came across her. It's likely she walked up to his car, asked if he was looking to party.
We have a person who has an obsessive and possibly strange relationship with the guns that he owns, with the prostitutes in the area, with the women in his life, who had an opportunity to lash out.
Perry, no stranger to the ritual of hiring a sex worker, beckoned her inside his vehicle. The couple drove off. They headed to Perry's home. It soon becomes clear Perry is not interested in sex. Within hours of picking Yolanda Sapp up on the streets of Spokane, Perry had shot her 3 times. He headed towards the river to get rid of Yolanda's body. The next day, February 22nd, Yolanda was reported missing. Later, passers-by on the trail overlooking the river called police. Yolanda's feet were bound by a distinctive green blanket. Aside from that, she was naked, her body left as if a trophy on display.
When you read the report about how this young woman's body was found, it was treated with a lot of contempt. Her breasts and genitalia are exposed.
Douglas Perry wasn't trying to hide his victims and get away with murder. He was trying to send a message. This was his calling card. He was displaying them as if they were trophies.
In a bitter irony, Perry knew his victims as friends of his own girlfriend, also a sex worker. He would even help the prostitutes by bringing them food, yet now he was looking to kill them.
He had an interesting relationship with the prostitutes who worked on that street. He also worked on that street. He told police later that he had been feeding them and taking them to his home, and people saw him doing that. He was presenting the image of someone who was trying to help prostitutes.
I think what this really speaks to is this kind of incongruous relationship that he has with what it means to be a woman. At the same time, he deifies and vilifies. So the woman is something that is the mother, is this angelic figure that can give life, that can create, and then the prostitute, the sex worker, is someone that's the opposite of that, it's the underbelly of that takes away life because she doesn't have children. And interestingly enough, I think he sees himself as kind of delving in both. On the one hand, I want to become this mother and be better, and I'll never be able to do that. So what I can do, though, is balance the stakes by killing what I see in these awful words he used as the pawn scum of the earth.
He'd killed just once, but he would soon kill again. Perry was not considered a suspect in the murder of Yolanda Sapp. His rap sheet didn't suggest him as someone who should be in the frame.
But if you look at the crimes that he partook in, from simple assault to assaults, most of them were firearm related. He would be on the radar screen for firearms type of offenses.
So he was free and able to hunt for another victim.
Clearly, at this point, Yolanda's friends, other sex workers in the area, would have heard about this, and this would have induced a climate of fear. One of their own, a young woman, was killed in the most brutal of ways.
Behind the barbed wire and locked doors of seedy motel rooms off East Sprague in Spokane, Nikki Lowe, 35 years old, worked as a prostitute. Known to police as a drug user, she was officially designated a street-level prostitute. As night fell in the city, Nikki, like her co-sex workers, would put herself on display before joining the tricks in their cars. She might head to a district of warehouses or alleyways. She may head towards the main roads over the Spokane River. One, Green Street, has a busy underpass. Not far from this underpass, Douglas Perry slows down on seeing Nikki Lowe. She will have had no problem approaching him. His was a familiar face.
He would have been well known in the prostitution community because he would have been a familiar face as somebody who dates these very prostitutes that he would kill.
She climbs in, and the couple head for Perry's place. On March 25th, 1990, a mile from the underpass on East South Riverton, the body of Nikki Lowe was found. She was draped over the guardrail next to the road, abandoned, like an object to be thrown in the trash.
He murdered and posed and placed these women naked in the very locations where their bodies were found.
He dehumanizes them, and there's even an arrogance. The way that he tries to rationalize what he did is by saying, well, you know, they weren't needed. There's no point in having these women in society. They give nothing. So almost trying to not only excuse himself, but say he's done a good thing.
Searching for evidence, detectives came across a trash dumpster nearby in which they found, amongst other things, a sweater, a pair of blue tennis shoes, sex lubricant, and a hypodermic syringe. The contents of the dumpster were those of Nikki Lowe. The evidence was kept, but at that stage did not incriminate Douglas Perry. He was still a free man. "51 days after the discovery of the body of Nikki Lowe, Kathy Brisboe left downtown Spokane and headed towards her patch where she worked as a sex worker. It was about 200 yards from the river on a road called East Trent. Douglas Perry spotted her, pulled up alongside her. The gun obsessive was armed with one of his small caliber weapons. Sometime later that night, Kathy Brisboe, still alive, had gone with Perry to a secluded area that he knew all too well.
Doug Perry brought Kathy Brisboe here. He drove in along that embankment where that dirt mound is built up. I think basically they came here to do the sex act, whatever that was. And that either before, during, or after, she must have had some sort of event that caused her enough concern that she probably tried to get away from him. So she ended up losing a coat. She lost her shoes over there. The jacket was found up in this area. She probably outran him down to there because when we get down to the bottom of that hill, he's probably chasing her, and then we start seeing blood drops. So he may have injured her up here, but we wouldn't see the blood till she gets down there on the path.
Brisboe had told her fellow sex workers that if she was abducted, she wouldn't go without a fight.
Well, I think basically she was fighting for her life.
Kathy Brisboe could not know it, but her fight would lead to the arrest of a female prisoner called Donna, thousands of miles away from the Spokane River, and 22 years later. Hers was a story long in the telling. Kathy Brisboe's fight with Douglas Perry continued as she and he tussled down the embankment near the Spokane River. As she tried to stay alive, she grabbed at his arms.
She obviously battled well enough to collect DNA under her fingernails of skin from him. It wouldn't have been from scratching his coat or grabbing his hair. It's more likely that she scratched some skin off and probably left scratches on him, doing it to collect enough skin so that would be still there 20 years later.
The encounter saw the couple scramble down to what is now called the Centennial Trail. Detectives could follow the path of the scrap.
Back then, kind of starting in this area, we started to see some blood drops and some pieces of hair and clumps of hair on the ground. And right down here on that bush here was a sundress. So if you keep going just a little bit past that is a spot where you look over the edge and her body was visible from up here down over the edge.
At some point, one of the guns that Douglas Perry considered part of his family put an end to the fight. Kathy was shot through the head and the chest and left to die at the foot of this trail.
In this general area, and there wasn't quite as much foliage as there is now, but in this general area, her body was about halfway down that embankment.
Spokane had suffered the loss of 3 women in just 4 months.
3 prostitutes, all killed in the same general area, posed in the same way. There are too many coincidences, all killed by firearms. I would definitely be thinking, there's a link, there's a connection. We have a serial killer amongst our midst.
They started a task force to work on a serial killer in 1990. DNA was in a position where you needed a pretty significant amount of blood, a blood drop, to get any DNA results.
The DNA exposed at the scene of the crime was that of Kathy, not her killer. So the original investigators needed more evidence.
So they were focusing on other trace evidence, and fibers were a big deal. There were green fibers that were all throughout this case that seemed to be somewhat of a commonality in the cases.
Green fibers on the clothes of Kathy Brisboe were eventually recovered from the deserted area. Green fibers were found on the second victim, Nikki Lowe, and on a green blanket binding the legs of Yolanda Sabb. But that evidence led detectives nowhere. In fact, this was a case where too many avenues of inquiry existed, none of which led to the killer.
There were many suspects. They were prostitutes, they had drug habits, therefore they had drug dealers, they had pimps, they had people that are known to, in general, not be nice to you if you didn't behave correctly.
But the persona of Douglas Perry wouldn't be on anyone's radar in regards to the killing of these ladies. He would be on the radar for firearms violations, not these kind of murders.
The fingernails of Kathy Brisboe were kept on file. Who knew when they might be useful? Under those nails, fragments of skin so small that they offered no DNA reading. But one day they would. As months passed, no credible leads were found. The case went cold. Douglas Perry remained free. By the mid-1990s, Perry was beginning to come to terms with who he actually was. Douglas seems to have decided to become Donna.
By 1994, he was identifying as a woman in a man's body, and he was a self-described transsexual. So it's possible that he was having relationships with women and men. He said he was a male prostitute as well, so he was probably using both personas at the time, both Doug and Donna.
In 1998, Perry is again arrested. Prison had by no means quenched his desire to cruise the streets of Spokane in search of sex.
Perry was stopped by the police down there. After a date that he had, he took this girl back to his house.
He brings a sex worker home, and she's really upset by what she sees. She sees an arsenal of weapons.
She was really creeped out about the weapons, all the weapons around.
We're talking, not kitchen knives here. We're talking crossbows. We're talking, assortment of guns and paraphernalia.
He was saying he wasn't going to hurt her because he liked her. So when he took her back downtown to the street corner, she flagged down the first cop, she said, and said, I want to tell you about this weird date that I just had. Oh, and there he goes. And so the police went and stopped him and identified him.
So she goes to the police and she raises the alarm.
Police find 5 pipe bombs, 49 guns, 20,000 rounds of ammunition, all in his house. There was yet more evidence in the paperwork recovered by police.
They find an assessment by a psychologist that attests to his pathological feelings and beliefs around women. It attests to these feelings of sort of intense misogyny for women. It attests to his violence.
There is writings about his mental health, and it's from mental health workers about his disdain and disgust for women.
So the police now not only know that they have somebody with an arsenal of weapons, which suggests that, you know, he has a predisposition or at least a like or an interest in violence or violent weapons, but they actually also have clinical evidence from a doctor saying this person is potentially dangerous.
So the Spokane police have indications now that this is a man with some psychotic problems that hates women.
The psychological assessment that the police find on Perry gives the police the first insights into his gender dysphoria. So actually, we can deduce that possibly this assessment was there because he was thinking about having a sex change. Clearly within the report, the doctor outlines the steps that he would need to take in terms of living as a female, in terms of what he'd need to do and the parameters around that. So this suggests that while he's dealing with these very sort of intense feelings of violence and misogyny around, you know, the females that he encounters, at the same time, he's also dealing with this identity crisis about, you know, what his gender is, who he wants to be, and how he's going to change who he is at the moment.
Perry is jailed on offences related to his arms stash, but he is still not considered a murder suspect, let alone a serial killer. During his sentence, he's transferred to an institution dealing with prisoners who have mental health issues.
This is largely based on his own self-report, was that he had been diagnosed with paranoid personality disorder.
It is now, when in the mental home, that Perry unburdens his conscience to a fellow prisoner. He reveals what he really thinks about the kind of woman that he has killed.
He shares intimate details with a fellow cellmate about his vile disgust and hatred for women. He talks about prostitutes and refers to them as that pond scum. But more importantly, he says he hates them, finds them so disgusting because he himself cannot produce, cannot procreate, cannot carry a child. And he looks at those prostitutes as a waste of time because they're wasting their bodies. Now, he shares those details with that inmate, and that would later be very helpful in the prosecution.
The witness would be helpful, but not for another 14 years. After being released, Douglas Perry decides it's time for drastic action. He no longer wants to be a man.
In the year 2000, he's finally released from prison where he was serving 2 years for weapons offenses. And he decides finally to address the gender dysphoria he's been feeling and goes to Thailand for sex reassignment surgery.
Douglas Perry has gathered enough money that he takes a trip and he goes to Thailand. It's in Thailand that Douglas Perry becomes Donna Perry.
A chance to finally address the real issues that he'd wrestled with perhaps all of his life. Or did Douglas Perry suspect that one day he might be brought to justice as a serial killer? So why not become Donna?
Some people have pointed out to the fact that, you know what? Maybe he did this as a way of throwing the police off the scent. Yes, he spoke to the cellmate about the murders, but he didn't confess to the police about them at this point. So is he leaving the country, you know, changing his appearance, changing his gender because this is something that he really wants to do? Or is this kind of ticking a lot of boxes in terms of the fear that he feels about being held accountable for his crimes?
If he was, it had worked. Douglas Perry was left behind in Thailand in the year 2000, and Donna Perry returned to the States. That fact was not going to help murder squad detectives.
Meanwhile, back in the States, in Spokane, Washington, you have these detectives, a 10-year-old murder case, 3 women. They're convinced they're looking for a man. Perhaps they'll find Douglas Perry, but they're looking for a man. There's no way that they could have ever possibly conceived that the same man who hated women so much would become the very women that he hated. So as a homicide detective, very difficult. It would then again be as if Douglas Perry was wiped off the face of the earth. And therefore, where do you go?
The investigation went nowhere for another 9 years. Advances in DNA technology meant that Spokane detectives like Jim Dresbach felt it worthwhile sending the fingernails of Kathy Brisboe, still on file, to a lab in Marysville, Washington State.
Well, in 2009, not 6 months after the case was sent to the Marysville lab, I got a call from one of the scientists that asked me to sit down, which I always love when you get a call that says, "Are you sitting down?" because it never seems to mean bad news. So I said, "Oh yeah." She said that she developed a full male profile from under the left middle finger of Kathy Brisboe. And therefore, that then is a huge lead that we've kind of been waiting for, and everything else had been exhausted.
Almost certainly, Dresbach now had the DNA profile of whoever had killed Kathy. He was hoping that the killer's DNA would be on the national database called CODIS, and if it was, would it reveal Douglas Perry? But he was now a she. How does that work in cases like this? In 2009, a shard of skin found under the fingernails of victim Kathy Brisboe as she'd scratched her attacker revealed a DNA profile nearly 2 decades after her murder. But there was no match to the DNA on the national database.
That gives us work to do, because we have a full male profile that is suspect now. So we can go around to all of these people, and the city detectives took a dozen reference samples from possible suspects that had been suspects for a long time, couldn't really be eliminated, but wasn't enough to include them as suspects either. So they just kind of sat there. So they went around and took 12 samples, sent them out to the lab to be compared to this unknown male DNA.
Did they have a breakthrough? No.
They were all eliminated.
To get a DNA match, the former Douglas, now Donna Perry, had to commit a felony which would require her to yield DNA. Thus far, Perry had never given up his DNA. The case was about to be blown open. One Perry obsession had not completely deserted when he became she.
Donna Perry may have changed her outer being, still didn't change who she was on the inside, that fascination with firearms.
In 2012, 62-year-old woman, Donna Perry, is arrested by police for having firearms, which are illegal, and she's taken in.
On yet again, another federal firearms charge. But now it's 2012. DNA has really come to the forefront, and there's a federal requirement that once you're incarcerated, you have to provide a sample of your DNA.
So they take a sample from that person, which is a buccal swab, which amounts to swabbing, between the cheek and gum with essentially a Q-tip, putting it in a box and shipping it off and waiting for them to come back and say, yep, it's a match, or no, it's not.
The serial killer Douglas, now Donna, was about to be confronted with her crimes.
You see, Donna Perry thought she could change her outer look, but the way she is molecularly designed on the inside, that will never change, despite what may be going on. Her DNA does not change. As a result of providing a sample of her DNA, The detectives in Spokane are notified.
Marysville called me again and said, we got a hit in CODIS on a name of who this DNA matches. They said it was Donna, AKA Douglas Perry.
And as a detective, I would have looked at the results and saw Donna Perry and been, oh my gosh, we have a woman. We were looking for a man all these years. I would have been blown away by the name Donna Perry.
Dresbach and his colleagues felt that they had a strong case. A fingerprint found on a bottle in the dumpster after the murder of Nicky Lowe matched Donna Perry's.
There was the DNA evidence, there was the fingerprint evidence, there was the circumstantial evidence of seeing her with the prostitutes, there was the testimony of her cellmate from 1998 who said that she admitted to the crimes.
The officers read her the charges.
She was in the room by herself, and so then I just waited for a little bit. Then I went back in with this, and I read it to her, and when I read that the charge was murder, she said, "Murder? Murder? Who am I supposed to have murdered? Murder?"
After all, Donna Perry hadn't murdered anybody.
Now, there were a couple other points during this interview that she said things that made it seem as if she was making a clear break between her personality as Donna and her past as Douglas. She said that she had gotten gender reassignment surgery to control her violent tendencies. She said that when, again, pressed, did you kill these women? Did you kill these women? Did you kill these women? She said no, but it was 20 years ago, and if Douglas did, I don't know.
This approach from Donna was a sign of a defense strategy to come. Investigators, even when they have significant scientific evidence, still like to get a confession.
What I wanted to do is I wanted to get her to acknowledge that she committed this crime.
An admission would not be forthcoming.
She's consistently reiterating that she didn't kill anyone, that Donna didn't kill anyone.
A colleague of Dresbach's gave Donna Perry enough rope to get what detectives felt that they needed, as he told her this.
We know that when people kill more than one person, it tends to continue on, and it goes on and on and on. What made this stop? Why did these stop? And that was really, that's a twofold question. One is to see if we'll get an indication that there were other victims that maybe we don't know about. Or two, to see if we can get an admission of some sort. Because she's still denying, no, I've never seen these people. And in this case, Perry said, well, Doug didn't stop it, Donna stopped it. That's as close to saying I did it as anything I've ever seen in an interview room.
22 years after the murder of 3 women whose bodies were abandoned by the riverside, Spokane police had their man. But would the woman he now was be found guilty?
I think what's really pathological about what Donna Perry does is she tries to scapegoat herself years earlier, tries to scapegoat the man she was for these murders. And she's very clear. She says, I did nothing as Donna Perry. I did nothing as this woman I am. It was all about this horrible man that I was.
Can somebody who identified themselves at one point in their life as a man now identify themselves as a woman and say, I'm changed, I haven't done those activities, and that's not me. Douglas Perry is dead. I am Donna Perry.
The jury unanimously rejected the Donna Perry defense. She was found guilty. Psychologist Linda Papadopoulos confirms the prevailing scientific view.
The extent to which this happens as a ploy, that she's just trying to rationalize this, trying to play the system, or if it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Maybe she believed so deeply that, this testosterone was, what was making her violent. It's a really sick way of conceptualizing it. There is absolutely no connection with gender dysphoria and psychopathic tendencies. There's absolutely none.
Donna Perry did not kill because she was transgender. Rather, Douglas Perry killed because he was a sadistic killer.
When you come down to the law, did Donna Perry, at the time that she was Douglas Perry, did she know the taking of life was wrong, was against the law? And clearly, it would be yes. Resoundingly, it would be yes.
no matter what gender Perry was, he was still guilty of being a serial killer.
I would think that the danger of Perry is that Perry doesn't look like what Perry is capable of. Perry looks like a meek, mild, doddering old woman, but it has potential that's far beyond what they look like.
And for seasoned detectives, the judge, jury, and law's attitude to those who claim innocence for the actions of a former self when a different gender came as a relief.
It sets a real precedent that she was ultimately incarcerated for these murders, because if that was the precedent, can you imagine the number of murderers who would suddenly, if they knew somebody was hot on their trail, would opt for a sex change operation somewhere?
Because I think she's kind of confusing what it means to have gender dysphoria. She didn't have, multiple personalities. This is somebody whose personality traits were consistent. What she did wasn't about how she felt about her gender. She did this because of how she felt about women, the anger, the violence that she had within her. And I think whether she was male or female is almost besides the point.
The mind of the serial killer Douglas Perry may well work differently now that she is Donna Perry. But Jim Dresbach doesn't care. Perry was a killer and could not hide behind a sex change operation.
You kill somebody, you're going to get caught. And I don't care if you go to the extent of changing your sex by surgery or not, or color your face or cut your hair, you're going to get caught.
It doesn't matter what the genitalia says. What matters in this case is what the DNA says. Donna Perry, Douglas Perry, they're one and the same. They are the killers.
Donna Perry, gun obsessive, transgender, and serial killer, was sentenced to life without parole. Burning in the flames of a homemade crematorium, the remains of yet another man murdered at the hands of a serial killer.
He wasn't just a statistic. He was somebody's son. He was mine.
Sheila Labar liked to be in control. She used her body to get what she wanted. Men, mere morsels to catch, using rather obvious seductions.
People around town gave her a nickname. They called her Sheila the Peeler. They were always hoping that she would flash a little this or show a little bit of that.
As investigators tried to uncover the layers of Sheila Labar, they were trying to get inside the mind of a serial killer.
She was able to suck those men in, almost like a spider in a spider web, bringing them into their cave where she eventually would kill them.
Sheila Labar's seductions were not about sex. They were about taking lives before hiding the evidence.
This is a story that begins with the discovery of bones in a burning pile on a remote farm.
They were human bones, and they were male. An investigation into who and why they were being disposed of in such a do-it-yourself way followed their discovery. The picture exposed revealed a rare species in the grisly portrait gallery of serial killers. A woman called Sheila Labar, who ran a farm one day sold at auction, attending a mother who had warned many times that it was here her son was tortured.
His face was all cut up. His hands were all cut up. One of them was immobile. His head was down. He was ashen in color. He was all cut up, and he was in a wheelchair, and he couldn't walk.
Drawing on first-person testimonies from those whose lives intersected with Sheila Labar, Linda Papadopoulos has been on a journey of exploration inside the mind of a serial killer. A journey which begins with understanding how Sheila would choose a victim. It would always be a man, and he would be vulnerable.
I think Kenneth County was particularly vulnerable because he actually had learning difficulties. And what we know is that Sheila invites him to come and live with her, but effectively ends up keeping him like a slave.
I said, "Did she hurt my son? Did she hurt my son? Please tell me, did she hurt my son?"
What brushstrokes are needed to make up the complete picture of Sheila Labar? Not good ones. Then known as Sheila K. Bailey, she grew up in a tiny mill community in Alabama. The first not-so-subtle clues as to her behavior later in life come from those early days.
Sheila's childhood was very troubled. Her older sister says that Sheila was the subject of sexual abuse from her father and from other men.
Kevin Flynn knows Sheila well. He spent hundreds of hours with her researching her life story. Sheila's timeline is populated by horror stories filled with monsters.
One evening, Sheila's father comes home drunk, and he's rummaging around in the refrigerator and throwing everything on the floor, and he's in a very foul mood. And he turns his attention to his wife and his two youngest daughters. They decide that they're going to flee the house. They're running towards the cornfields near the back of their property. Their angry father picks up a can of paint and throws it at them, and it hits Sheila in the head, causing a lot of bleeding.
Her suffering escalated. Sheila was a victim of monstrous abuse.
She was passed around as a toy. She was a sex object for her father, for his friends. She was abused mentally, she was abused physically, and most of all, abused sexually.
By the time she had reached 18, Sheila appeared happy enough, but she left at an escape route from the abusive home and from small-town America.
Sheila has big dreams. She wants to move out of this little town. She wants to become either a model or a country music singer. And so she's looking for a way to get out of her life. And one of the ways that many girls do that in a small town is to marry a guy. And so she got her hooks into a guy by the name of John Baxter. John was a lineman for a utility, had a good job, but he was divorced.
John Baxter had a 4-year-old daughter called Wendy. She was about to discover what it meant to have an abused, mixed-up stepmother for a carer.
Sheila was not the most maternal person. Wendy told her father that when he would go to work, Sheila would put Wendy in the closet. And it was also then that Sheila would take care of her by making her drink something. Brandy, maybe it's cough syrup, something that made her feel very sleepy. And this was her way of taking care of the daughter throughout the day. Essentially, she didn't want to deal with her.
Maybe it's a case of the abused becoming the abuser.
That kind of treatment did not sit well with John. When he found out that that's what Sheila was doing, he basically said, "You're out of here." So that was a pretty quick relationship. I believe they got married on New Year's Eve, and by Valentine's Day they were divorced.
As she became older, became bitter, vengeful, brooding, Sheila sexualized herself to lure men into her spider's web.
And I feel that part of this would have led her to see men as perhaps just valuing her for the way that she looked. And so perhaps what we're seeing here is her trying to take back control of that objectification and use it for her benefit.
And whilst it was to her benefit to have a man close by, that's what she arranged. A series of them came and went. What was it like to be her partner? A man called Ronnie Jennings was to discover how violent she could be. At first, he had fallen for her physical charms.
She basically wants to be loved. She wants to have a normal life. She thinks that Ronnie can provide that, but they're not really clicking. They're not really getting along. She takes out her frustrations on Ronnie. She's abusive to him.
No longer was she going to be the victim. She wanted to make sure that the people she was involved in a relationship, that she had utter, complete, 100% control, much like her father had complete control over her.
It was early days in the development of what Sheila would become. She controlled by being physically abusive. Ronnie would later give evidence that he was concerned she'd attack him whilst he slept. The threat of violence was never very far away.
He decides that he doesn't want to be in the relationship anymore. This crushes Sheila.
And she responds in dramatic fashion.
We know that she has a suicide attempt.
Sheila takes a handful of pills in front of Ronnie and gets in the car and drives away. Gets into an accident. Sheila is nearly killed from the crash and the overdose. What was interesting about this incident is that while Sheila was in the hospital, she had gone into a coma and recovered. But when she came back, she told everybody that she had died and gone to heaven, and God had sent her back as an avenging angel. And this was the persona that she carried with her throughout the rest of her life.
By 1986, the psychological makeup of Sheila K. Bailey was in place. An abused child who had become an abuser. A controlling woman who could be violent to men.
So when you take her childhood experiences and now that she's an adult, is she now a hater of men?
In her late 20s, the avenging angel comes across an advert placed by a man 1,300 miles away in Epping, New Hampshire. A successful chiropractor, he also had 1,200 acres of upscale prime land.
He was a widower. He lived on a horse farm in rural New Hampshire. He was very lonely after losing his wife and wanted companionship.
Wilfred Labar, known in his local community as a kindly man, lost his wife in 1985. On coming across the advert in 1987, Sheila sees a chance for a new life. The aspiring model doesn't want to miss out on this opportunity. She plans a way to get the job of companion to old man.
And she knew how to answer that ad. She just didn't write and say what she was looking for in a man, long romantic walks on a beach. She got right down to the point. She bared her breasts. She exposed herself, sent photos of herself in very sensual positions, and she got a response.
She just doesn't send a message saying, hey, I'm interested. She sends it with topless photos. She's very quickly cottoned on to the fact that if she wants to get Labar's attention, she needs to sexualize this interaction as much as possible.
Well, he fell pretty hard for her. Sheila immediately got on a plane and began dating Wilfred Labar. And she insinuated herself into his life almost immediately.
Soon, Sheila takes the name of the much older man. There is no marriage, but Sheila K. Bailey is a thing of the past. The world and Wilfred Labar are introduced to Sheila Labar, and she won't be playing the role of the compliant wife anytime soon.
Sheila was now engaged in a relationship with somebody that could very well at least be the age of her father. And she's this beautiful woman at the time, and she's able to manipulate and control because the older man is looking at Sheila, this is one of life's bonuses. How could somebody like himself get this beautiful young woman? And so she used that. That was Sheila's web. She was able to suck him in and eventually use that to her advantage.
She started to take over his chiropractic business. She became the office manager and basically ran off all of the other employees that were, who could see through her. She separated Dr. Labar from his grown kids. Basically, she worked to isolate Dr. Labar and to take over his life and his property.
To get that level of control, she had used her sexuality. Soon, she would use abuse.
Sheila was violent with Dr. Labar. There were times where, to get away from her, to let her cool off, Dr. Labar would leave his own house, and he would walk almost a mile to the next neighbor's house and crash on their couch because he just didn't want to be around Sheila that night.
How extreme would the avenging angel take her violence? How wicked were her intentions? Between 1986 and 2003, Sheila Labar insinuated herself into the life of a man who had been a successful businessman and capable father. The relationship lasts, but at a price to Wilfred Labar.
This is a woman who's in total command. For 17 years, she rules Wilfred Labar's life.
This was all part of a larger scheme of Sheila's, which was to separate Dr. Labar from his children and to take control over his life financially, emotionally, physically.
Sheila had it all. Run of the farm, control over the business, and soon, who was going to get what from his estate?
She convinces him to give her power of attorney, to sign over property, and he does, because he doesn't want to lose her. He perhaps maybe doesn't feel worthy to have somebody at the time as beautiful as Sheila, but she's able to use what she believes is her beauty and charm to convince him to basically sign over everything.
How was she controlling Wilfred? Flaunting her sexuality, using it to manipulate. Indeed, she had quite a reputation in Epping.
People around town gave her a nickname. They called her Sheila the Peeler.
She would often be in very scantily dressed clothes and sometimes just drop it and bear it all.
Well, she had no problem coming to the door for delivery men wearing almost nothing. It got to the point where it was sort of anticipated, and it was expected that she would be very provocative and try to stir things up. She definitely used her womanly ways to get what she wanted. Sheila is always thinking about how she can manipulate men to get what she wants.
I think we live in a world that objectifies women, that sexualizes women, and I think in her case, clearly this was something that she saw as a tool that she wanted to use for her benefit rather than having it used against her.
Whilst living with Wilfred, Sheila, bizarrely because he doesn't object, decides to marry. But not Wilfred. She comes across a drifter down on his luck, a vulnerable man.
His name was Wayne Ennis. He was a migrant farm worker, and Sheila just fell for him. And what was so strange is that Sheila brings Wayne Ennis to the horse farm, and the three of them now, Dr. Labar, Sheila, and her new husband Wayne, are all living together on this farm.
According to Wayne Ennis, when later tracked down by police, 18 months after marrying Sheila, she proposed something radical to make their lives a little more comfortable.
She's intimating to Wayne Ennis that he needs to do something to hasten Dr. Labar's death. Wayne is very troubled by this, so he goes to Dr. Labar and tells him what Sheila is planning. And he's fearful as well for his own safety. Dr. Labar then drove Wayne to a bus station, got him on a bus, and he got out of town, and Sheila never saw him again.
In the year 2000, Wilfred Labar died.
Sheila told Dr. Labar's family that just one day he'd had a heart attack and died on the kitchen floor. And she insisted that he be cremated. It wasn't until later that people thought that this was suspicious. At the time, nobody thought much about Dr. Labar's death, that it was anything other than natural causes.
Sheila K. Bailey, the abused, penniless, aspirant model of old Alabama, is ancient history. As the new millennium begins, Sheila Labar is a propertied woman whose appetite for men is still alive and well, especially if they're easy to abuse.
She went from being the victim to being the predator, to identifying those who are vulnerable, whether by age, or by mental capacity, or because of their own relationships with their own family, and she chose her victims wisely as far as being vulnerable.
She lures one after another, always being violent towards them, eventually meeting this man, Michael Deloge.
Michael Deloge is sort of a lost soul. He sees himself as a songwriter, as a poet. He had been married and had a kid, but that relationship fell apart. He got into drugs and alcohol, and he found himself many miles from home in a homeless shelter in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. He was separated from his family, and it was Sheila who came along and found him. The prospect of staying in a homeless shelter or going with this woman to a farm where he could get a nice warm bed and a steady job and sex, well, that's a very easy decision to make.
It was around now that Sheila began a go-to tactic, taping conversations.
Sheila has an interesting habit of recording her telephone calls and her conversations.
The recordings would be used by her to control whichever men she lured to the farm. She would force them to make false confessions, to agree that they'd been abused as a child. Mike was the first to suffer what would be described later as brainwashing.
Sheila convinces Mike that growing up he was sexually abused and that he is a pedophile. Now the family says, no way, this isn't. The people that he is saying that he abused were never abused. Where is he getting this idea? Sheila is telling him this. Sheila is preventing him from calling his family.
Almost a brainwashing technique. You isolate someone and you can have vast influence over that person. So she would isolate the people she had relationships with, keep them away from others in society.
She's also poisoning the relationship and getting into his head until he believes it. He actually believes that he is a child molester because she has told him that so many times.
So therefore she would have that ultimate control, much like a puppet master.
The puppet master had Michael Deloge dancing to her tune. There were regular sightings of him over the 2 years that he was known to be on the farm, but one day he was seen in troubling circumstances.
The neighbors describe an incident where, coming down the wooden path from the horse farm, they saw a man stumbling and bleeding from the head. It was Michael Deloge, and he just walked right past a neighbor and said one word: Sheila.
Michael Deloge would never be seen alive again. In 2006, Sheila Labar was living on the farm alone. The men she had preyed on had displayed one kind of vulnerability or other. They were much older, homeless, drifters down on their luck. Next in line was Kenneth County, a young man with development difficulties.
When it came time for sports, Kenny aced it. But he had problems with his friends because he didn't speak properly. So they would tease him and taunt him. And that's how it was.
At 24 years old, Kenny had the mental capacity of a 12-year-old. In February of that year, depressed at failing to be admitted into the army after training camp, he tried to kill himself.
At that time, Kenny took some pills, and they took him to the hospital. They called me. I went to the hospital, and they had guards, police guards, watching over Kenny. And I just shook my head and I said, why?
Kenny recovered, Though she was unaware at the time, it is after the suicide attempt that his mother Carolyn believes Kenny came across Sheila Labar.
I was told at the time they met on a chat line. Come to find out, when I found out in court, it was a sex chat line. And Kenny wanted to be like anybody else. He wanted to be loved, he wanted to be accepted. And Sheila searched for those that had problems, and she could tell that Kenny had problems in his speaking, in his thinking, and that's how she went after him, on a sex chat line.
She was using telephone dating services where you would leave a message in somebody's voicemail box. And Sheila had a habit of screening the calls, and if the man sounded confident, if he sounded like he really had it all together, she would delete those messages. If the guy sounded meek, if he sounded like he might not be of high intelligence, if he sounded like he was somebody that she could manipulate, she kept those messages and contacted those guys.
One of those she followed up with was Kenny County.
Kenny met her on February 14th. They met at a bar, Valentine's Day, in New Hampshire. It was a big age gap. He was only 24, she was in her 40s, 47.
They have a few drinks, and they move from the bar to the back seat of Sheila's car, where they have sex. A few days later, Kenny goes to his roommate and says, I'm moving out. I'm moving to New Hampshire to live on this horse farm with my new girlfriend. And that was the beginning of the end for Kenny.
Kenny excitedly told his news to older brother Brian.
So Kenny says, oh, by the way, I have a girlfriend. So Brian says, you do? And he said, yeah, yep. He said, I met her on Valentine's Day. We went out to eat. We went out to eat before. He said, and she's rich. She has a big farm. She has a beautiful car. And she's 47 years old. So Brian looked and he said, what? He said, Kenny, no. You don't want to be with a 47-year-old. There's ulterior motives there. No. And Kenny looked and he said, no. He said, she loves me. And I love her. And my son Brian said, you just met her. And so Kenny said, whatever you do, don't tell Mommy. Don't tell Mommy. And he said, you're my brother. Be my brother. Do not tell Mommy, because she'll come looking for me. So Brian never told me.
When at the farm, Sheila begins to isolate Kenny from his mother.
Sheila is doing the same pattern as she had for all the other men. Sheila begins by trying to cut Kenny off from his family.
So I think what you have here is a man with cognitive deficits, so he wasn't able, or he didn't feel entitled to escape, and a woman who clearly is very capable when it comes to controlling men.
Carolyn, fearful for her son, calls him night and day.
I called the Epping police.
When Kenny is not returning Mom's phone calls, that's a red flag. Kenny's mom has to find out, what is going on. Is he okay? So she contacted the police in Epping, New Hampshire.
And so she'll call up the police and she'll say, listen, my son is staying with this woman and this woman is abusing him. You need to help him.
So the patrolmen go to Sheila's farm and they knock on the door and they say, we want to talk to Kenny.
Sheila didn't like that because of the fact that I sent the police to her house for a well-being check.
But when the police try and follow up on this and they go to speak to him, both Sheila and Kenneth actually say, I don't know what that woman's talking about. I don't know what my mother's talking about. I'm fine. I want to be here. I'm a grown man and I want to be here. So that's never actually acted upon.
Sheila had the run of Epping. What Sheila said went. She'd be able to say anything to the police. They didn't want to deal with her, so they just backed down.
As with Deloge, Labar tape records staged conversations with Kenny.
At one point, she had over 300 cassette tapes of things her on the telephone. Some of it's pretty innocuous. Some of it is, rather disturbing.
She had tapes of Kenny accusing his mother of molesting him, and also, as with Michael Deloge, of Kenny confessing to being a paedophile. Nothing on tape was true.
She probably had a gun to his head, don't know. But she had him saying all these horrible things about me. That I sexually molested him when he was a baby, that I continued to do that. It was just horrendous. And Kenny was telling Sheila all these things, and she was very, very graphic, and she was very nasty. And I was dumbfounded. She did all the talking. His voice became yes, no, and it was very robotic. When I heard that tape, I didn't want to see him anymore. I didn't want to talk to him because it was just it was horrible. It was horrible. But that's Sheila.
When Carolyn calls the police about her son, she discovers that Sheila has also played a recording of Kenny's voice to the police.
And what the officer heard was Sheila berating Kenny and getting him to confess that he was a child molester and that he had abused kids. And on the tape, the officer could hear Kenny becoming weaker. And at one point, he heard Kenny vomit. And then he thought he heard Kenny faint because Sheila was saying, "Get up, you can't fake fainting." So Sheila made this tape as a confession for some reason. It seemed to be a proactive move because she had something in mind for Kenny and she wanted to cover her tracks.
The police did not respond to the complaints made by Carolyn or those made with an accompanying tape by Sheila Labar. Kenny was an adult, they said, and anyway, they'd seen it all before. Men came and went from the farm many times, they said.
She would take young men to her farm, and they'd work the farm, and then she'd call the police department to say that they left. Well, I found that pretty bizarre, and I said, well, how do you know they left? How do you know she didn't hurt them? She could have killed them. Did she kill them? And then he started laughing. He said, no, that's not Sheila's M.O. And I said, did you ever go there to check to make sure that they were okay? Detective Cody said, no, there was no reason. And I said, is she going to kill my son?
Carolyn County had become fearful for her son's life. It's worth reiterating in the story of Sheila Labar that the Epping police were aware that men regularly appeared then disappeared from her life. As regards Kenny, there were soon signs that he was being abused. He was next seen in public when out shopping, and he looked awful.
Sheila took Kenny to Walmart and he was unable to walk through the aisles himself. She was pushing him in a wheelchair. His face was a weird color, and he had bruises and cuts and burns. And the thing that she was buying were diesel fuel cans. And she made Kenny hold these fuel cans as she shopped. So there's Kenny. He's slumped down. He's not really responsive.
He was spotted by a police officer, photographed, asked, "Are you okay?"
They asked Kenny if he was all right. His head was hanging. He was drooling. And she told him to shut the F up. At that point, the police should have taken him. They didn't.
Despite the fact that he looked like he was in distress, there was nothing for the officers to do. He wasn't a minor. They couldn't take him into protective custody. All they could do was watch Sheila push him out the door.
They escorted her out of Walmart. They watched her take him to the car and lift him from the wheelchair into the car.
Why had she bought so much diesel fuel when spotted with Kenny at the local store? How much danger was Kenny County in whilst down on the farm with Sheila Labar? Carolyn County did not give up on her son Kenny as he failed to return her calls. In fact, she contacted the police in Epping repeatedly.
I'm putting on a second missing persons report. I want you to go to the house.
The detectives, after being pushed, they go out to speak to Sheila, and they want to know about Kenneth. Where is he? When was the last time he was seen?
When they got there, Sheila was not home, so they walked around a little bit, and they found a burn barrel. There was a fire going inside, so they went over and took a look inside.
They don't like what they see.
And what they found in there was a human bone. And on the knob of the bone was some human flesh. So now they are very worried about what has happened to Kenneth County.
The officers make no arrest. There is not enough evidence.
You can't just turn around and right away arrest somebody for a fire. There has to be tests that are done. Are these possibly human bones?
Sheila returns home, and she's angry that the cops are there on the property, but she lets them come into the house and see that Kenny is not there.
Imagine what that says about her. Imagine what that says about her sense of being able to manipulate, to control perceptions, about her sense of intelligence, her sense of control over the situation, that she will actually, invite people to investigate a case that could lead directly to her.
Investigators think they see what could be blood on the walls. They also find Kenny's shoes, and they find it kind of odd that he would leave without his shoes. But they have no warrant to be there. They can't take any evidence. They decide, we're going to come back and get to the bottom of this.
Detectives return 2 days later and go back to the scene. The sneakers they had seen in Labar's home had gone. When asked, Sheila confesses to burning them. They return to the fire. The bones, which appeared to be human, have largely disappeared, but some bone shards remain and are sent to a forensic team for analysis.
So now, analyzing and sending those bones off, looking at those pieces of evidence, that process is now taking place. And it's probably now at the point where the detectives are no longer treating this as a missing person case. Where is Kenneth? They're thinking to themselves, what happened to them?
Inside the house, police carry out a detailed forensic investigation. Using specialized blood detection devices, they are shocked by what they see. Though attempts have been made to clean surfaces, there is widespread evidence of human blood on furniture and on wood.
An indication that there was an extremely large amount of violence that took place inside that room. Nobody can question the physical evidence that was there at that scene. It was close enough and enough probable cause to now go and arrest Sheila.
They asked her point blank, where is Kenny? And she pointed to a plastic bag filled with soot and bones, and she said, he's in there.
Later, a detective would describe what he saw to Caroline County.
I just want you to know that we found a bone, and as he put it, it was too big for a rabbit. And that was my son. That was my son.
Sheila did a lot to obfuscate the evidence that she had. She took bits of bone and teeth and smashed the teeth so that they couldn't be used for identification. She had dismembered the body. She burned it, and because of the charring, they could tell that it had burned at different temperatures. She had been burning and churning the bones. During the search for Kenny and for other evidence on the farm, they flushed out the septic tank, and it was there that they found some new evidence, but it was the driver's license of Michael Deloge. And this let investigators think they may be looking for more than one body.
The wallet and ID of Michael Deloge. I'd wonder, first of all, well, where now is this person named Michael? Who is Michael?
Michael Deloge. Michael had simply vanished from Epping, last spotted at Sheila's home. Labar's story of life and deaths began to unravel. Sheila, not in custody, knows that she's getting closer and closer to being charged with murder, and she isn't going just to wait and let it happen. She flees the state.
She needs to go someplace else, but they just don't want to let her out of her sight, so state police have some detectives tail her. But Sheila's pretty savvy, and she's able to get away, and she has a plan on where she's going. She withdraws a lot of money. She starts going by an alias. She calls herself Casey, which is actually her middle name. And she decides that she's going to get her hair colored differently and that she's going to go on the run. She sneaks out of the hotel that she's staying in and wanders to the interstate and starts hitchhiking. And a man picks her up.
The man, called Steve, has no idea that he's taking a wanted woman out of the state.
So Steve picks her up in his car. And after having some breakfast together, they continue down to Boston. And she gets a hotel room with him, and the two of them have sex, and then he leaves. And it isn't until he sees the news that Sheila is a wanted woman that he realizes who he had picked up.
Before too long, Sheila moves on to another man to help her avoid detection.
While Sheila is hiding out in Boston with police all over New England looking for her, she's holed up with a guy by the name of Kenneth Washington. He just met her on the street, she came on to him, and she was able to crash at his place. And when Kenneth Washington sees Sheila's face on the TV news, he realizes who he has let into his home. And he calls the police and essentially sets up her capture.
In March 2006, Sheila Labar is finally arrested. 2 years later, her trial for murder begins, and the case turns on what's been going on inside the mind of Sheila Labar.
The defense's strategy was not to argue that Sheila wasn't the killer of Michael DeLoge or Kenneth County. What they did was argue that Sheila was insane.
Sheila tells the story of what she did with Kenneth and Michael in the hopes that she's going to try to claim insanity.
Initially, she pleads guilty, and then she reneges and says, actually, no, guilty because I'm insane, for reason of insanity.
In order to claim insanity, you have to, at the time of the offense, be able to prove, and the burden is on the defense, in this case Sheila, that they didn't know what they did was wrong. Why this story would unravel with Sheila is because of the amount of planning that went into her murders and the cover-up. Somebody who's crazy isn't going to try to burn evidence. Somebody who's crazy isn't going to try to cover up the amount of blood that was inside the house. Somebody who is crazy isn't going to methodically pick the most vulnerable of victims.
After several months of testimony, the jury eventually finds that Sheila was sane at the time of the killing.
Sheila Labar is found guilty of the murders of both Michael DeLoge and Kenny County. She eventually confessed. But were there others? What about the men that came and went on the farm that nobody saw ever again? Suddenly, other gruesome evidence was discovered.
This is 100 acres of pasture and forest, and this ended up being the biggest police search in state history. They patrolled as much of it as they could, looking for any evidence of a crime, maybe bones that are the remains that had been scattered someplace. They couldn't find anything except a pair of human toes. One of the things later about the human toes was that they didn't belong to Kenny, and they didn't belong to Michael DeLoge. So, who is it?
It's worth underlining, human bones found on the farm were not those of the two men that Sheila Labar had been convicted of killing.
We don't know how many victims are truly out there that may have come across the paths of Sheila.
On this farmhouse, turns out that Sheila killed twice, possibly 3 times.
We don't know how many victims that are out there that Sheila actually was able to suck into her web.
We know that Michael Deloge was killed. We know that Kenneth County was killed. But what about some of those other guys that were spotted going to the farm but were never seen leaving it? It's hard to say.
So somewhere out there, there's probably another missing person, somebody that was one of society's vulnerable people.
Sheila Labar had suffered an abusive childhood at the hands of men, including her father. She grew to become a woman who men found attractive. But her outward appearance did not speak to what was going on inside Sheila's mind. Her looks were simply a way of giving her control, forgetting what she wanted.
So she's good at manipulating people. So someone asks for a companion, she sends sexy photos. She's able to move in, she's able to kind of keep somebody under her control to the point that everything that he has is left to her. Then later on, she has someone else move in, someone whose mother is so concerned that she's calling the police, yet she's able to say to his mom, do you know what? He's under my control now.
Labar was given 2 life sentences. She will never be released. Wilfred Labar's life was never the same after he allowed Sheila into it. Michael Deloge's life was taken by her, Kenny County's too.
She looked at him as somebody that society wouldn't miss. She didn't count on that mother's love.
How she could have taken a human life and did what she did to him and laugh at it. He was somebody's child. He was my child.
Police home in on a phone signal. Will they be in time to save a missing couple?
This shipping container had several padlocks, chains, really bolted shut this place. So they spent a long time cutting through all this metal to actually get into the container.
They can hear someone inside. Is it a woman who's been missing for 2 months?
What's causing the banging? So you're there on that farm to look for a body and to hear that banging. Oh my God. Are we going to find Kayla or Charlie alive?
Just a girl, just a girl. How are you, honey? This is bolt cutters.
As they free her, they want to know where her boyfriend is.
The gentleman on the line said, Mr. Carver, we found Kayla. And my first question to him was, where's my son? His response was, we haven't found him yet.
The rescue had taken place on the land of a respected real estate agent, Todd Colehap.
You might as well tattoo USA, All-American, all across his forehead. He would look like your all-American, successful, 30-something-year-old man with a good business.
But Todd Colehap was not what he seemed. He'd killed at least 7 times. Who, when, and where?
I was not meaning to hit the mom. I prefer not to shoot women if I can. I'm gonna refuse to shoot a kid.
As one of his kidnap and rape victims sat opposite him in court, she, the judge, and the jury were trying to get inside the mind of a serial killer. Like any other day when dealing with clients at his real estate firm, Todd Colehap is trying to be helpful. This conversation, though, is about kidnapping.
I still got a kidnapping charge. It ain't going nowhere.
It's a conversation about rape.
But I had her cuffed, and she wouldn't go anywhere.
And it's a conversation about murder.
So then you shot him how many times?
Shot him twice.
Okay.
In the chest.
Okay.
He dropped forward. When he dropped forward, I went around him and put another one through his spinal column.
Todd Colehap is no ordinary home salesman.
Colehap comes out of the garage, shoots Charlie Carver 3 times in the chest. He drops dead there. He ends up burying Charlie in another shallow grave.
It's a hard thing to accept that your son is gone.
What made the prisoner sitting opposite cops in Spartanburg, South Carolina, the man he was? Linda Papadopoulos has been seeking the truth about the mind of Todd Colehap. From the start, his is not an encouraging life story.
So Todd Colehap's case is really interesting because what we find is very early in childhood, a certain deviancy.
Todd Colehap, extensive history, a very unique life. He was born in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, before moving to Spartanburg with his mom. And from a very early age, court records show that he had a pretty troubling childhood.
Even as young as in the nursery school age, Todd Colehap was violent. People were afraid of this child.
Some reports will say things like, well, he was very difficult at school. He get into trouble. He had behavioral problems. And that's, I think, something that you hear about a lot of kids. What you don't hear is about young kids being involved in hurting animals, in killing them.
An early favorite pastime of Todd the infant, torturing pets.
There's records indicating that he bleached a goldfish because he wanted a gerbil, meaning like he actually poured Clorox onto a goldfish to torture and kill the goldfish.
Police agencies, detectives need to be keenly aware of the animal crimes that take place around them.
He shot pellet guns at dogs.
Anytime you have a child that is purposely and intentionally hurting an animal, whether it's a dog, a family pet, or a wild animal, anytime you see a child that can torture and maim and derive pleasure from seeing death, it's a huge red flag.
His childhood was far from settled. In fact, he was not, at first, a Colehap.
He was uprooted several times. His mom was married and remarried several times. His birth father divorced his mom at a very young age. And then when she remarried, his stepfather adopted him legally. So that's why he became Todd Colehap. He was born Todd Samsel.
As Todd Colehap, his behavior did not improve.
He punched holes in his walls, he shredded his clothing. Teachers from his early classes in school would report just pretty abnormal behavior.
What's happening here is an emerging picture of a young sociopath.
It's not as if the authorities weren't trying to do something about Todd.
He was sent to a mental institution in the hopes that they could reform him, that they could help him. Why is his brain wired this way? He was eventually released from the mental institution, and he's out. Looks like a normal teenager.
What you don't hear is about young kids being involved in aggressively destroying property that belongs to others and belongs to them. So we know that very early on, Todd Colehap is displaying many of the issues that you would see in a psychopath later on in life.
The worrying child took until he was just 11 before he was hooked on pornographic magazines. By 15, he was enacting his darkest fantasies.
There's a 14-year-old girl, and there's Todd Colehap, 15 years old. His weapon of choice this time is a firearm. He abducts this 14-year-old girl at gunpoint, brings her back to his own house, ties her up with duct tape, wraps that tape around her mouth, and she's helpless, and he sexually assaults her. He threatens her family, he threatens to kill them, and she believes him. She can see the look in his eyes. She has seen what he has done to her. She truly believes Todd is going to kill her family.
The idea that Todd is capable of such a violent act at such a young age, combined with the fact that we know about his other acts before that as a child, is really starting to build up a picture of somebody that not only can't empathize with others' pain, but actually seeks it out and is beginning also to have a complicated relationship with sex and dominance and sex and violence.
It was all there, the red flags as police call them, that Todd Colehap would one day kill. For now, he'd have to wait, because after his conviction for abduction, he was sent away for a long time.
He has to be listed as a sex offender, but he goes, as a 15-year-old child, he goes to the man jail.
Whilst inside, he begins taking courses, equipping himself to be Todd Colehap Mark II.
During that 15 years in prison, he's gotten smart. He is smart enough that he's gone to college. He's obtained knowledge. He has recreated himself. He has performed as a prisoner what society and what prison reformists would think is a model prisoner. And at age 30, he gets released once again into the world.
Once he came back to Spartanburg, he lived a seemingly very normal life. He went to school, got a degree.
He has completely changed who he was, at least on the outside. But that evil, that violent monster was still within.
After getting a job as a graphic designer, Todd is able to indulge two post-prison passions: collecting guns and motorbikes.
He had several BMWs, motorcycles, would brag often about the amount of guns and firearms and ammunition he had been collecting.
2 years after the reformed Todd Colehap was freed, something very bad happened in Spartanburg. Todd Colehap may have appeared rewired for the better since his juvenile days, but he wasn't. He was a killer.
I just remember standing there, and it was a tearful plea to the judge, but I just looked over there at him and wanted him to know what a great person that he took out. Charlie would have gave you the shirt off his back.
As he drove his motorbike along Interstate 85 in South Carolina, Todd Colehap was heading for Chesney, a town with a motorcycle shop.
On November 6, 2003, that date became known as one of the most notorious homicide cases in Spartanburg County. It all happened at Superbike Motorsports, which was a pretty popular motorcycle dealer and shop there in Chesney, South Carolina. And at the time, on this date, 4 people were working there. So it was Scott Ponder, who was the owner, Brian Lucas, who was the shop manager, Beverly Guy, who was Scott's mother and also the bookkeeper there, and then Chris Sherbert, who was a mechanic there. So the 4 of them were working there that day, and all 4 were executed, shot and killed right there in the store.
They knew Todd Colehap.
He's a frequent visitor there, often discusses different parts of a motorcycle and different activities, and this was his hobby. He was well known in this shop, and they liked him. However, this one time, Todd went into the shop, and they disrespected him because Todd wasn't as knowledgeable as those workers. See, Todd's persona and his conversations, he tried to portray himself to those workers inside that motorcycle shop as someone he was not. Todd revealed some things that actually stood out, and they called him out on it.
Tell me from the very beginning about Superbikes.
Got there, not everybody was there. Went and sat on a few bikes, did my usual, basically stuff for time, and doing my best to make sure that the paying customers were not there. Collateral damage is not cool.
Sat on a few bikes stalling for time to make sure.
Customers were not there. This was during the time, as you know, that it was not busy. I chose time that was not after work, when I would have a lot of people in there. Did not want to shoot other people.
And because they called him out, Todd felt like that small little kid again. He felt angry, and that little demon inside of him that could blow up fish and destroy animals and tear them apart limb by limb came out.
He decided to take his revenge. On the day he arrived, secretly armed, Colehap did not just want to kill, but to wipe out the staff and anyone else who got in the way.
I cleared it in under 30 seconds.
You what now?
I cleared that building in under 30 seconds. You guys would have been proud. I'm sorry, but you guys would have been proud.
All 4 were executed, shot and killed right there in the store.
And in just a matter of seconds, Todd Colehap executed 4 people.
Beverly and Chris were found inside the store. Scott Ponder and Brian Lucas were both found outside the store, just outside the front door in the front parking lot.
Did anybody, as they were falling, did they look at you? Did they face you? Did they say anything to you? Was there any conversation, don't, please, whatever?
No, sir.
With any of this? I don't remember hearing any of that. I will tell you that once I was engaged.
Okay. So
It's like, at that point, it's almost like a video game. It's not a game, but it's almost like you're focused on, you've been there, sir. You know what I'm talking about.
Suspects, not Todd, were interviewed, but despite a police campaign for information, the case went cold. 9 years would pass before Todd Colehap would make his revelations about what had happened at the motorbike shop at Chesney.
I'm saying, see, I did not want to shoot.
I didn't want to shoot other customers.
Colehap may have been happy to brag about it when eventually arrested, but in 2003 he remained beyond suspicion. Indeed, he set about the complete rebranding of Todd Mark II. He wanted to become a businessman, buying and selling houses. For that, he needed a license, and he wrote a letter to the South Carolina Real Estate Commission, apparently confessing to some of his early crimes, but decidedly playing down the incident which led him to spend 15 years behind bars.
This letter, I think, is so telling. It's kind of coming clean. Yes, it was a rape, but actually, if you think about it, it's more like a lover's tiff. We got into an argument and things got out of control, and I was a kid. So you begin to see him trying to manipulate perceptions about him. And again, I think he's a master of this.
He was just 15, he said. He'd confronted his girlfriend about two-timing him. They'd gone back to his house rather than shout in the street. Yes, he had a gun, one which he'd never fired. It was his simply because he wanted to defend himself against gangs. The out-of-court plea bargain, which left him on the sex register rather than guilty of rape, that was never mentioned.
This horrible incident that we see back in his childhood, age 15, is something that, people will read the letter where he explained it and think, you know what, he was right. It was a blip, it was, awful that it happened, but look, he's been rehabilitated, he's better. But of course, that's not the case.
But it works. Todd C. Colehap, age 33, had used his powers of manipulation to gain respectability.
It's actually scarily impressive. So what we find is that he sets about reinventing himself. He gets a real estate license. He then becomes interested in flying. He gets a pilot's license. He's a successful member of the community.
And from there, we just see him really digging into his professional life. He eventually opened his own company, TKA Real Estate. He was the lead broker, and he had almost a dozen agents working under him, selling houses for him and everything.
By 2015, Todd Colehap seemed set. The real estate business had been kind to him. He was the go-to guy when it came to buying and selling homes around Spartanburg, Anderson, and Woodruff in South Carolina.
He looked like everyday an American. He looked like that person that you would want to be your neighbor. That's what makes him so scary.
Todd had bought a big house himself and a 100-acre farm. some of his neighbors found something unnerving about him. He seemed obsessed about guns.
Some neighbors down in Woodruff, where he had that massive property, they would hear gunshots every night. Hundreds of rounds of ammunition. So they were only left wondering, what's going on down there? There must be a lot of target practice if that's the case. He also spent a lot of time down there. So when he wasn't working, he was down there in the evenings at the property, just kind of doing whatever he did down there. So those are a couple of signs where I think in the public eye, you'd start to wonder, what is it about this guy? There's got to be more to him.
Occasionally, Todd Colehap advertised for help. On one occasion, a couple called Johnny Joe Coxie and Megan Lee Coxie turned up for an interview. This might be a nice job to supplement their income.
Many real estate agents or real estate firms, they will hire people to stage a house, get it ready for sale. Or they hire people to clean up existing homes so they can get it ready to sell. Todd advertised for a job for people to come and help him be his cleaners. So this unsuspecting couple went and met Todd at Todd's farm. This was a nice area. It was a lot of land out there.
What was there to be fearful of as they pitched up at Todd's farm? Mr. Colehap seemed such a nice guy.
From a sociological point of view, we have indicators of success, and success makes us feel safe. So if someone has a big house and a good job and a nice car, well, those aren't traits that you typically associate with a psychopathic murderer. Those are traits that make you feel safe. If this person is out there and is saying, well, look, I need someone to come and help me clean the house or help with the gardening, well, clearly they're successful enough. Clearly they have the right interpersonal skills. And I think it's because of this that Todd never really raises any serious alarm bells.
But Todd was still the little boy who would throw a tantrum if anyone got on the wrong side of him, and he was prepared to use extreme violence to sexually dominate and/or kill. The Coxies were in deep trouble.
Colehap had met the Coxies, met Megan Coxie first, and had invited them both to his property.
As they arrived at Todd's farm, something happened.
Todd claimed that Johnny pulled a knife on him.
And that's when Johnny pulled a knife out.
What'd you do with his knife?
Oh, no, I don't keep that kind of crap.
You just threw it out?
Yeah, that's fine.
Colehap claimed the couple who had a criminal record were trying to rip him off.
What did she do when Johnny pulled the knife out? What did she say?
Nothing.
So you think she was planning on the planning of this?
I think she entirely wasn't planning of it.
Okay.
There was no, oh shit,
Yeah.
Johnny, what are you doing? There was none of that. This was, she knew he was doing that.
Mm-hmm.
They saw a guy who had a shitload of money, driving a car they can't afford, and they were going to get something.
And the events that unraveled was a complete nightmare.
So then you shot him how many times?
Shot him twice
Okay.
in the chest.
Okay.
He dropped forward. I went around him and put another one through his spinal column.
Okay, and you shot her?
Not exactly.
Not exactly. He had other plans for Megan.
He shoots and kills Johnny and takes Megan Coxie captive.
He forces her into a locked-up container that he owned.
Tied her up, left her there, while I tried to figure out what to, I didn't know what to do with it, man.
Right.
Got rid of Johnny, came back, left her there, went and got food, fed the girl.
Fed her after she tried to rob you?
Man, what are you gonna do with her? I don't want to shoot her.
Her husband dead, Megan Coxie at his mercy. Todd Colehap armed, and no stranger to killing. Megan Coxie does not have much to defend herself as she's locked in a container by Todd Colehap. She does have a lighter.
She tried to light my damn building on fire. Do you know how?
In the back of what building?
The Connex.
He holds her there for about a week. This is near Christmas of 2015.
Mostly just left her the hell alone. I didn't know what to do with her, and then she kept burning shit. I come in and all of a sudden find that she burnt her blanket, and she burnt this. She's sitting next to 100,000 rounds of ammo. Love of God, please stop burning shit. If that thing goes off, you know what that would do to a neighborhood?
So after a short while, Megan tries to get out, and she puts up a struggle with Todd.
Mistake. Colehap knew only one way to deal with someone putting up a fight. He shot Megan in the head, and it's likely she died instantly.
At that point, he had killed Johnny and Megan Coxie, both of which their bodies were found buried in shallow graves on his property.
The couple were reported missing, but weeks of appeals yielded nothing. Todd Colehap carried on with his business, using Facebook to sell houses, LinkedIn to boast of his success.
While the people that know him face to face, for all intents and purposes, see him as perfectly respectful, his social media site starts to display something that you don't see when you meet him.
If the front behind which Todd Colehap hid the fact that he was still a torturer, a murderer, had worked to allow him to kill and most probably rape again, what was stopping him doing it all over again?
We know that he's already kidnapped and killed one couple, Johnny and Megan. And he's done this by putting out an ad and saying, look, I need someone to come and help me take care of the house. I need a cleaner, I need someone out in the garden. And he does this, gets away with it, so he decides to do it again. And Kayla Brown and Charlie Carver respond to the ad in the paper. And that's what the beginning of the end is for Todd Colehap.
It was the beginning of the end for a young man called Charlie Carver.
Charlie was a good kid growing up. Wanted to go out, make an honest living, honest day's pay.
One weekend, Charlie met a young lady. The relationship blossomed. Her name was Kayla Brown.
Charlie and Kayla, they met through Kayla's mom, became friends, and just kind of stayed friends, for a year or so. And Kayla was, there, and they were basically just friends. And then eventually, I guess it led to them dating.
On a hot summer's weekend afternoon, Charlie brought Kayla back to meet his dad.
I really didn't meet Kayla until the Saturday before they went missing on August the 31st. That was the first time I met Kayla. And when I talked to Charlie's mom, I'd asked her how long had they been going out, and she said she had only met Kayla once. So, we got to talking, and, they'd probably only been dating just a couple of months.
Missing. The couple had gone missing. Nobody saw or heard from the couple for 5 days. What had happened to them?
Texted him, called him for days. And then on that Sunday, his mom went ahead and filed a police report and reported him missing.
And Charlie's own mother filed a missing persons report. And in that report and in the conversation, it was known that they were going to meet somebody about a job.
They'd set off for the job on August 31st.
Colehap asked Kayla and her boyfriend Charlie to come to the property in Woodruff to help clean. This was primarily to help him clean up the land there outside. He wanted them to make some paths for him and clean up some pathways for him.
On arrival, Colehap set about his work.
Unfortunately for Charlie, he was killed probably in those first few hours.
The way that Todd operates really gives some insight into how au fait he was with control and manipulation. The first thing he does after kidnapping these couples is to shoot, the strongest party, right, is to shoot the other man. And I think this accomplishes two things. I think on the one hand, he has less of a challenge there, someone who he doesn't outweigh by 50 pounds and doesn't, outrank by, 5 or 6 inches. But the other thing that it does is he ensures that he tells the women he's not playing around. So they better feel intimidated, they better feel scared, and Most importantly, they better not challenge him.
Kayla is at his mercy. As he had with Megan, he throws her into his container. Somewhere nearby, her phone is left discarded. It becomes vital in what's to happen next.
Kayla had a cell phone. As a detective, one of the first things you would do in this kind of case is order the cell phone records. Now, one would think that you would be able to declare an emergency. There were really no signs that an emergency was happening at this point, so you're having to rely on court orders, warrants, or subpoenas. Telephone companies can take as much as 6 to 8 weeks before you get those records back.
In the 9 weeks which followed the disappearance of Kayla, all hell would be brought to her life. Colehap buried Charlie's body, showed Kayla where, the better to control her. Meanwhile, the police and the families of the couple were desperately searching for them.
For at least the first 30 days, we would just cover roads, rural roads, looking for a car that was wrecked off the side of the road. Park on the road, go down an embankment, do anything that looked out of place. Our car could be hid up under, if it went underneath brush or whatever. Charlie's mom and her husband, they did the same thing that we were doing. So we cover more roads around the county. Because, at that time, that's what we thought had happened.
They were not to know that Charlie was dead, or the chilling ordeal that Kayla was being put through. She'd been chained in his container, forced to become the sex slave of Todd Colehap.
There were some things inside that shipping container, little bed area, boxes, some things for storage, a lot of ammunition and firearms, but he chains her up in there.
When you look at the way that he acted, it's truly chilling. Every day, he would go home around the same time, around 4 o'clock, take out Kayla Brown from the container, take her into the house, rape her, then put her back and go on with his day, and repeat the same thing over and over again. So there's a ritualism around it.
Todd used fear with Kayla, not only physical torture, but mental torture, describing how he was good at taking life, good at killing people. That would keep the fear factor. Can you imagine being chained up and the person holding you hostage is telling you how much they enjoy killing and how good they are at killing people?
There's probably this almost obsessive element around it, right? So kind of this comfort in scratching this itch, this comfort in having this release. Indeed, there must have been a serious high gotten, not just of the sexual gratification, but of the ability to impose your will, to subjugate somebody to that extent. And if we think back to those early days when he was just a child and acting on animals the way that he was acting on human beings, you can see almost how this escalated.
After some weeks, the phone company was able to supply detectives with the data from Kayla's phone.
Using Kayla's phone number, the detectives are able to, what's called pinging, look at the cell phone towers. And it basically is a triangulation. And they know that somewhere within a 3-mile radius of the last cell phone tower that Kayla's phone hit will be Kayla's phone. And so they start the search. And where they start is the closest area near this cell phone tower.
And it narrowed their search down to that area in Woodruff where Colehap had purchased and was developing that 96-acre property. Quickly, they traced the property back to the owner, who was Colehap at the time. So that leads us to November 3rd, 2016. On this day, there's a team of law enforcement officers who go to the property in Woodruff where Kayla Brown was being held captive.
Kayla had no idea anyone was searching for her. She could simply hope and pray. Colehap had murdered her boyfriend in front of her, showed her where he was buried, and then where he had buried Johnny and Megan Coxie. Kayla expected to be killed, not rescued. Detectives expected the same fate. They arrived at the site where the phone ping had led them, Todd Colehap's farm.
I would expect to find a dead body. Because my training has told me on typical abductions and kidnappings, if you don't find them in the first 48 to 72 hours, the more time that goes on, the higher probability that they're dead. And in any case, most abductions, people are killed in the first 6 hours if it's going to be an abduction where a death is going to occur. So my heart would be racing.
What would detectives find inside the container on the farm of Todd Colehap? This is the moment Kayla Brown was rescued. Detectives' hopes were raised as they battled to get inside because of what was not there.
So as those doors are ripped open, what would stand out? No smell. It's a farm, a small shed with no smell, and you have the banging. What's causing the banging? So when you're thinking you're there on that farm to find a body, to hear that banging, oh my God, are we going to find Kayla or Charlie alive?
Just a girl. Just a girl, just a girl. How are you, honey? This is bolt cutters. This is our investigator. He's a paramedic, sweetheart. Oh, yeah. Okay, we're going to get you out of there, okay?
Kayla is indeed alive. She has a chain, like a dog chain, a thick chain wrapped around her neck. She can't really move too long, and the detectives and the police are able to rescue her. What is discovered shortly thereafter, unfortunately, Charlie was murdered.
Do you know where your buddy is?
Charlie?
Yes.
He shot him.
He shot him? Who did? Douche.
Todd Colehap shot Charlie Carver 3 times in the chest, wrapped him in a blue tarp, put him in the bucket of the tractor, locked me down here, and I never seen him again.
Charlie was murdered that very first day. You see, Todd didn't need Charlie. He wanted Kayla. He made Kayla her chained up sex slave. He did to Kayla anything and everything that he wanted to do. He gained pleasure from torturing her as well as doing other horrible, horrendous acts that one can't even think of.
We're gonna step you out, sweet.
Charlie Carver had been shot almost immediately he arrived at the property. A detective called his father.
The gentleman on the line told me, he said, Mr. Carver, we need to talk. We found Kayla. And I just remember thinking, wow. You know, I mean, because at that point, my first question to him was, where's my son? And his response was, we haven't found him yet.
Kayla led police to a shallow grave, that of Charlie Carver.
Just didn't seem real. The whole conversation, you're thinking, no, it can't be. You get to that point, you're denying it, you know. You got to show me, you got to prove to me that you know without a doubt that it's him, you know. And they were going off of a couple of tattoos that he had and things of that nature. That's how they identified him. It's a hard thing to accept that your son is gone.
Based on the information.
Todd Colehap was not on the farm. Detectives notify a second team that had tracked down where he might be, at his home.
After they find Kayla, they alert the other team that is with Colehap in his house, questioning him about Kayla's disappearance and their connection with him hiring her to help with the houses. At that point, they communicate with each other saying, we found Kayla, and the investigators with Colehap ultimately arrest him there.
We have Kayla. Excuse me? We have Kayla in your property. She was locked in a container, okay? She has told us that you shot and killed Charlie. Then go ahead and put him in the back of your car. Sir.
His arrest had put an end to the killing, but the grieving for victims' relatives was only just beginning.
We went into the bond hearing, you know, they sat us down, told us don't make eye contact. You can't say anything, you can't do anything. They walk him in, and the only thing between me and him was a row of chairs. And I'm thinking, what can I do, or how quick can I jump over this row of chairs, and how long before they pull me off of him? You know, that was my first initial reaction.
Colehap is confronted by detectives in an interview room. For hours, he'd refused to talk, but suddenly he changed his mind and reveals where other bodies are buried, those of Johnny and Megan Coxie.
Todd leads the detectives right then to another couple that came onto his property seeking a job that Todd had reached out to, and he did the exact same with them. The man was discarded quickly. The woman was kept around until eventually she wasn't needed anymore.
I told her I wasn't going to touch her, wasn't going to rape her, wasn't going to do her. Just calm the hell down and let me sort this shit out.
But more astounding revelations were still to come.
Eventually, he sits down with investigators and confesses to being the shooter responsible for that quadruple homicide at the motorcycle store in Chesney.
Todd starts telling them about the bike shop, that he's the one responsible for the slayings of the 4 people. As a detective, that would be one of your life bonuses in a career. Probably the detectives were shocked, blown away that Todd would admit and confess to that crime, which is so different than the crimes that took place on his property. So what kind of person were we dealing with?
He had not even been a suspect in the Chesney slaughter.
So now he's looking at 7 bodies to his name.
It's under interrogation that Todd Colehap confesses. He confesses to the murder of Johnny and Megan Coxie. He confesses to the murder of Charlie Carver. And he confesses to something nobody even linked him with in any way, which was the quadruple homicide committed years earlier.
At that time, all 3, manager, owner, and the mom, they were in the back and were coming this way to figure out what had happened.
Why the confession? He is showing who's in charge, dominating.
He's caught, and he wants you to know that he was much better at this, that he duped you for years, that he was able to kill not 1 person, but he's responsible for the murder of 7 people.
Todd is confessing to crimes because he's getting a thrill at watching the detectives learn from him. He wants to show that he's good at something. He's the expert at killing, and he got away with it. And the cops are inquiring why, how, and they become the students. And Todd gets that thrill out of teaching and educating the cops just how he got away with the crimes he got away with.
All of a sudden, I had 3 people in front of me. I dropped the nearest. Mom was the closest, and I shot her 2 to 3 times in the chest.
He wants the police to know this. And I think the reason he wants them to know this is because this feeds into the true thing that he values about his identity. And I think that's being able to manipulate and hide and conceal and to be better at that than your average sociopath.
Did a tactical reload and dropped the other one. That was a very fast reload.
Todd Colehap's childhood was pockmarked with instability and littered with wrongdoing, but the man he became was stable enough to rebuild his life whilst in prison, taking a degree. He went 12 years without committing a crime, evidence that he knew right from wrong, and enough for Charles Carver never to forgive him for taking away his son.
Charlie would have gave you the shirt off his back. He would have gave you his last few dollars, whatever he had, if you needed it. And for him to take him out the way he did was terrible. There's right and wrong, and everybody knows what's right and everybody knows what's wrong. You choose to do what you do.
Colehap pleaded guilty to the murders that he had boasted of. His confession and cooperation with the police became part of a plea bargain. There would be no death sentence. He was given in 2017 7 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. In 2018, Kayla Brown initiated proceedings against him in a civil court, bringing the couple together in the same room for the first time since Kayla had been chained and tortured by him. She and others are seeking damages from Colehap.